Hello, this is Deborah Cohen, and my podcast broadcasts weekly Sunday mornings 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So I hope you will join me because you can chat with me during the broadcast. Our broadcast has a couple of names depending on how life evolves in my life, as we're all on a spiritual journey, and if you're truly a seeker, you will be transformed. What's the Bible say? B'Tselem Elohim or Imago Dei, from glory to glory, we are changed because God says, "Be holy as I am holy." So we don't just snap our fingers and we're holy. It's a process, it's actually a lifetime process. So we're trying to be better people than we were yesterday. But it's also important in this process of growth continually on this planet that we don't forget our roots. And I'm talking today about the roots of America. History classes are disappearing from the curriculums in public schools, and there's a cost to losing your past. So let's dig into this if you're interested. I'll be right back after this message. I never expected my life to become a memoir. I gotta move a little longer, and I will be much stronger. And I'm running hard and free to be me, to be me. My body glides in stealth motion, like a locomotion. I see the track in front of me. And when the night finally came, I could barely breathe from the excitement. The stage lights hit my face, warm and golden. I strapped on my Les Paul, the same one I still own, and we launched into Take It Easy, Take It Easy. Follow if you believe pain can become purpose. Okay, this is Deborah Cohen again. I'm glad you're here. And what is the name of this podcast? Somebody was asking. Well, it started out as a story and a song. And then I kind of thought, because as a senior citizen, I'm evolving into a Tai Chi Yang style teacher, 24 short form, I should call it the Tai Chi Kindness. But then I got interested in writing this book for the 4th of July, 2026, and I changed the name to Judeo-Christian America. But anyway, they all apply, under the umbrella of my business called perennialpeople.us, and the website is still under construction. But it's kind of, if you're an artist like me, or, if you're an artist, sometimes you're multifaceted and it's hard for people to understand what exactly you're all about. So I'm going to put everything I'm doing, which is multiple businesses, meaning indie music, an author writing nonfiction books, a merch designer, or they call it band merch on Amazon. If you just search, like, for example, this shirt here, I don't know if you can see it because my microphone's in the way, but if you search George Washington quote for America on Amazon, you'll discover my merch, Deborah Cohen Music. You could search that as well. And then fourthly, I am getting certified to teach Tai Chi, specifically to people like me that are senior citizens, or anybody that's in recovery. It's sometimes a long road. A lot of us are still dealing with COVID symptoms post COVID. And one of my issues is, as a singer, which is detrimental, breathlessness. So Tai Chi is a way that I can still move, because you know what? Motion is lotion. Like my Aunt Madge and me, we work out online every Monday morning on Zoom at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So we realize she's great. My aunt is like in her 80s, and she's still hula hooping. So I'm just going to, or how about this? If you don't know my Aunt Madge, how about, I'm sure most people, at least my age, know who Cher Bono is. And she's in her 80s and she is just going strong. That woman is not slowing down. So we don't have to sit in the rocking chair and wait for the cows to come home, which our previous generations thought once you hit my age, you just go on the porch and swing. That's not for me, babe. So, anyway, here we are, and we're going to talk about history. I'm just going to read from this journal. I want to thank sapirjournal.org for releasing this publication. I'm going to switch to my reading glasses now and just share with you because I think it's it's related to my current book release called Judeo-Christian America, of rebuilding bridges between each other. And my book is specifically between Jews and Christians because I've noticed, dabbling in both sects, SECTS, that there's divisions there. Even amongst the same religions, there's division. So we don't want to be divided. We want to be united. And the thing is to be united without having to agree with what somebody else thinks or believes. That seems to be a difficult task nowadays. It seems like promoting hatred in the media gets more likes than this podcast, actually, you know. So, what does that tell you about the moral condition of this country? If you're interested, like me, in rebuilding bridges between Americans, then this article is for you. All right. History. Oh, and by the way, the article is called A Return to Teaching History by Alan Guelzo. And you can see it if you're watching the video, his name and the book title in the video. So let's listen. History was not supposed to be America's long suit. The founding fathers prided themselves on the historically unprecedented nature and radicalism of their revolution. And in the century that followed, our greatest national poet, Walt Whitman, and that's a matter of opinion, celebrated pioneers who cheerfully sing, "All the past we leave behind. We debouch upon a newer, mightier world, varied world, fresh and strong, the world we seize." History has grown even less central to our imaginations in the 20th century, in the 21st century that we're now in, as the focus of the American education has, over the past 150 years, shifted away from the formation of citizens to the training of employees. Okay? In elementary and secondary education, history has been increasingly squeezed out by demands for more math, more science, and language arts teaching. Partly this is the byproduct of good intentions and unintended consequences. The No Child Left Behind Act of 2001 was supposed to provide federal heft for improving primary and secondary school learning. What it produced, however, was a drop in the instructional time spent on history, music, and civics in more than 70% of the nation's 15,000 school districts, in favor of a frenzied focus on boosting math and reading scores. And the reason I'm giggling is because I'm getting a flashback of being in high school. And Mr. McLaughlin, I remember him. He had kind of not big ears, but they kind of stuck out. Mr. McLaughlin. And I'm in algebra class. I don't know if I hated that class more or whatever. So let me just stick to the story. You don't want to hear my commentary. But anyway, Mr. McLaughlin called on me and he said, Debra, what is X plus Y? What does it equal? And I looked at him. I think it was 11th grade. I'm like, I don't care. He said, Excuse me? That's when teachers were the final say. And I said it again. I don't care. Deborah, Miss Deborah, go out into the hallway and stay there for the remainder of the class. And I'm like, yay. And to this day, I'm like, I still don't know why I need to know that. But I remember X plus Y equals Z. Okay. It doesn't help me. Sorry. I'm just not, my brain doesn't understand that. So, one of the things as teachers, we know, hopefully, that not all students learn the same way. And just bowling me over with an incomprehensible equation that makes no sense to me, it's up to the teacher to find a way to make it interesting to the students. Ding, ding, ding. Okay. All right. By 2014, the National Assessment of Educational Progress showed that only 18% of American middle schoolers could be considered proficient in American history. Ooh. By 2022, it had sunk to 13%. Several years ago, I quizzed one of my classes at Gettysburg College about their high school history textbooks. Half of them didn't have one. I would have been one of those, actually. The other half, literally half, had been issued Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States, which reduces the history to a series of simple binaries of slave owner against slave, landlord against tenant, corporation against worker, rich against poor. No wonder, then, that from 2011 to 2017, the number of history majors in American colleges and universities has declined by a staggering 33%. According to Benjamin Schmidt, who analyzed this decline for the American Historical Association 2018, quote, students and their parents seem to be thinking a lot more that they need to major in something practical, end quote. And, quote, history, humanities, English, and philosophy are not those practical majors, end quote. What do you think? And they are not entirely wrong. The number of college and university history teaching positions advertised on the academic job site HNet collapsed from a high of 742 in 2007 to just 285 in 2023, with only 61 of those positions being open to new career historians of the United States. Uh-oh. Nor is the future of history likely to improve. Today's undergraduates have lived all their educational lives on keyboards and screens, and I have had to deal with more and more students whom I cannot send to the archives to do research because, quite simply, they cannot read cursive. Ugh. And as a former high school teacher, I can vouch for that because a lot of my students were never taught how to sign a check with cursive handwriting, and they couldn't read it, nor could they. History is the meta-narrative. Everything in human experience and knowledge has a history, and without knowledge of that history, we are condemned to a constant recovery from the starting line, as though we were Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. Now, as a side note, the author is like, he's thinking that I remember that movie. I don't. And I haven't watched it again, so it just wasn't my cup of tea. But anyway, if you're a Groundhog Day fan, then you understand what this guy's saying. The impulse to wonder about the past and cast it into a narrative is as old and deep as the cave paintings of Lascaux and as recent as last night's documentary. Yet history presides over more even than narrative, whether it's Thomas Cole's The Course of the Empire paintings, Shakespeare's plays, or Verdi's Ada. History has been the former or the informer of all the other arts. So again, this author is assuming that I know what those things are. So I have no idea. Maybe you do. If you do, explain in the chat, and I'll be back after this brief message.
I don't even know where to start. These people didn't give up. Neither can I. Peace isn't a dream. It's a story we have to write together.
And we're back, and this is Debra Cohen. I hope you're enjoying the information in this article and that you don't mind me reading from a text, because I've had, interestingly, a poll, men telling me that my teleprompter reading is an AI screw up. I guess he thinks I'm an AI person, that I'm not real, and he didn't like my reading. So, when it was actually me reading the teleprompter. So that's why I'm going back to reading from a piece of paper until I can, look like I'm natural in front of the teleprompter. All right, let's continue with the topic of a return to teaching history, specifically in America. All right, but looming up behind all of these in importance is the sense of identity that history imparts to individuals and societies. The historical declaration in the Bible, quote, and I know this, I recognize it, "My father was a wandering Aramaean," end quote. Do we even know what an Aramaean is? Okay. Was the first statement of a Jewish identity in Deuteronomy 26:5. Check it out. And it is no accident that these words appear in the central portion of the Passover Haggadah, or the Haggadah, depending on which way you want to pronounce it, a text designed to shape identity through the recitation of historical narrative. Think about it. I'll take a breath so you can absorb. The experience of the past forms our present. Who we were shapes who we are. True or false? Put it in the chat. Who we were shapes who we are. Yes. But sometimes, like if you've suffered abuse, you need to overcome the trauma so you don't stay that way today and every day. And I am speaking from experience. St. Paul tried the same narrative technique, exhorting the first generation of Christians to connect their history to that of the Jews. And here's the quote from the Brit Chadashah, specifically 1 Corinthians 10, verses 1 through 3. For I do not want you to be ignorant of the fact, brothers and sisters, that our ancestors were all under the cloud, and that they all passed through the sea. They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food. I'm taking a pause so you can think about it. And so Cicero, regarding the Roman Republic, said, quote, "To be ignorant of what occurred before you were born is to remain always a child," end quote, scoffed the great lawyer. End quote again, "For what is the worth of human life unless it is woven into the life of our ancestors by the records of history," end quote. I wish my teacher had told me that, the value of history, because I remember as a child, I'm talking about elementary school, or maybe it was junior high, I had a chip on my shoulder. Not when I was real young. I'd say by the time I was 13, because of something that happened to me, which you can find out if you want to know. What happened to her? Well, then go to YouTube and look up the song Your Debt, and you will find exactly what happened to me. So I developed a chip on my shoulder, and the teacher said, "We're going to study about whatever. And I said, who cares about dead people? I mean, seriously, that's what I said. Who cares about reading about dead people? I want to read about now, current events. And that was like in the 60s, late 60s. My. You have to tell people that if you don't study your past, you'll always be a child. Well, is that a bad thing? Yes, if you're immature in your 40s, yes, that is definitely called stunted. If you want to measure how much is lost by the neglect of history, whether in teaching or writing, ask those who have suffered under persecution. For Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the erasure of history is the first strategy of tyrants who know that wiping out the past gives the oppressed no means of comparison to a better time or place, no ground on which to resist in the present. A people which no longer remembers has lost its history and its soul. That's pretty deep expression. And that's said by Solzhenitsyn in 1976. Quote, to fight for our memory of what things were like, that is the task of the artist, end quote. And here I am. I have awakened as an artist, and I am now acknowledging in my 70s the value of studying my history. Better late than never, right? Okay. That fight was the task to which I can't say his name, Solzhenitsyn applied himself in the Gulag Archipelago. And it is worth noticing that 15 years later, the Soviet tyranny collapsed. Okay, the dictators understand this, and they tremble. Much as every despot has come to power, promising better future worlds of various sorts, the totalitarian my tongue got in the way. The totalitarians really look first to control and manipulate history. Can you relate to today with all the propaganda? The great Czech novelist Milan Kundera saw this in the Eastern European Soviet bloc. Quote, they shout that they want to shape a better future, but it's not true, end quote, Kundera objected. The autocrats want to be masters of the future only for the power to change the past. This is why the first step in liquidating a people is to erase its history and memory. Quote, destroy its books, its culture, its history, then have somebody write new books, manufacture a new culture, invent a new history, aka propaganda. Before long, the nation will begin to forget what it is and what it was. The world around it will forget even faster. And I can see that we have this condition in America today, which concerns me greatly as an American citizen and a teacher. So why then do we run so carelessly the risk of ignoring history today? First, we should say the obvious. Taking care of the past as the task of historians is not easy, especially if you have a student like I was. There is, after all, so much of it, and no single person can hope to be master of more than comparatively small slivers. And as a side note, my book, Judeo-Christian America, is about the time of the American Revolution, not the entire history of America. Even within those slivers, the work of archival research and the parsing out of patterns require a persistence and a wisdom that are sufficient to exhaust a lifetime. No one who aspires to do the work of history should embark on it with anything less than the wildest and most preoccupied form of love. Or with what one of my old teachers, Theophilus John Herder, called sitzfleisch. Pardon me if I'm saying that wrong. I think it's Yiddish. By which he meant the capacity to sit for interminable lengths of time in archives and libraries, turning over one page after another. Does that describe you? Okay, let me continue, and I'd like to finish the second point he's making before we close today, and we'll continue this interesting story next week. I hope you find it interesting. Second, and almost as obvious, are the contradictory returns one is likely to gain from the evidence. The moment one rises above the simplest historical statements, as in, quote, the United States entered World War I during the presidency of Woodrow Wilson, end quote, tension and debate begin to animate the presentation. Still more contradiction is liable to emerge as new and unanticipated sources of information surface, not unlike the discovery provided in 1998 by DNA testing that Thomas Jefferson had probably fathered at least one and probably all of the 6 children born by his slave, Sally Hemings. Or the revelations from the old Soviet archives indicating that embarrassingly well-placed Americans in the 1950s had spied for the Soviets. Oy vavoy! You're not going to learn that in school today because it's probably been removed from the history books. And this is why propaganda in America is like wildfire, because American history has been diluted to the point of incomprehensible to students today. They are filling in the blanks with their emotions, primarily of hatred, frustration, anger. It's because the textbooks don't tell the whole story. It's time for a change. And I'm just taking a sliver of history from the American Revolution and putting it in my book, Judeo-Christian America by Debra Cohen, to help us understand the whole truth during that time in our history. Because some peoples have tried their best to erase anything Jewish from our history, which is how we come up with today the statement that America is a Christian-only nation. That tells me that whoever is saying these things has never learned the part that Jews played in the growth and success of America's birth. Think about it. Consider reading it, even if you don't agree with what I say. As far as the way I understand history, every author is going to have a bias when they write. So think for yourself, as the Beatles used to sing. Think for yourself and I will be there with you. Think for yourself and do something positive. Understanding that history is not complete when you learn it as an American citizen should cause you to be a seeker of the whole truth, and then you can construct your own activism campaign and do something to make America better. Not like Greta, who only has part of the truth and goes and gets a flotilla to go bombard Gaza with good intentions. You know, that's what not knowing the whole truth does. You invest in your passions with the wrong reasons because you don't know the whole story. So I'm just saying, get the whole story. And if you don't know the whole story, speaking of Greta And if this is 2026 when you're listening to it, you're going to know who Greta is. Then you don't have the whole story of Palestine's history. And I've also written a book based on secret archive documents that were recently discovered in the UK archives that explain the whole history of the Palestinians, which, by the way, is not nearly as long as the 2,000 plus year of the Jews who lived there before the Palestinians ever came into existence, when Yasser Arafat, their first leader, who, by the way, is an Egyptian, created this group of frustrated Arabs and snafu'd the whole world by taking most of these Palestinians who are really Jordanians and Egyptians and demanding rights for these people. That's not the whole story. That's just one sliver. To get the whole story, get my book, Judeo-Christian. No, scratch. That's what I just talked about. Jewish Palestine / Arab Palestine, second edition. It's documented history of Palestine at the time that the Palestinians were created in the what? Well, I'm not going to tell you the whole story. Get the book, Jewish Palestine, Arab Palestine, second edition. Then, Greta, with all of the facts, put your energies into something constructive and bootstrap your anger and steer it toward a better world. I understand you thought you were trying to help the Palestinians in Gaza. That is a noble cause. But your anger against Israel is unwarranted. And it's because you don't know the whole truth. None of us do. But keep digging until you find something that makes sense. All right? Okay, enough of my spiel. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll do round 2 of this book, of Return to Teaching History. Thank you, Alan. I can't see the last name because it's blocked by my camera. Guelzo, I think it is. And look for it. If you're very interested and you want to know more, go to Sapir, SAPIR journal.org. And they have this thing. Once you do get the whole truth by seeking whatever sources they may be, but I'll just give you a hint. If you seek sources like Hitler, you're probably still going to be doing the wrong thing because he murdered thousands of people, not just Jews, but blacks, any handicapped, all of the LGBT people were put in the toaster. So you really need to go to writers that have the facts, not their hatred spewed onto the pages of a book, and some unknowing person sucks it up because it feeds their anger, and then they have this bonfire and they go out blazing for the wrong reasons. Okay, if it's called fiction, propaganda, there's a lot of it. There always will be. And anyway, I know I'm just going to talk on and on and on. This is one of the reasons I have to use a teleprompter so I can just stop ranting. All right. Thank you for listening. And whatever else I was saying, you'll have to come back next week. And my podcast, A Story and a Song, a.k.a. Jewish Christian America. If you want to know more about me, you can go to my books website, Debra, that's Debra, Cohen, Cohen, books.org. And if you'd rather pursue my music, you can go to DebraCohenMusic.com. Thank you for listening. It's been fun, and I hope you learned something new, and you'll do something good with it. Tell me something good. Do, 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 do. Tell me that you like it, yeah.
As a priest, I want to educate my members with a nonfiction book about Palestine that will give congregants a biblical perspective of the Israeli-Palestine conflict. I found this new book, Jewish Palestine, Arab Palestine, 2nd edition, which was published right after President Trump took office in 2025. It explains the chronological details of the conflict and why the two-state solutions go against the Bible. I am asking my congregants to use this book in their Bible studies, and I'm getting a lot of positive feedback.
I was born into a strict Catholic family where I learned to flinch before a hand was even raised. I spent my childhood waiting for a punishment I didn't understand. So I ran. I traded the pews for music college and the hymnals for a rock band in Boston. My life became a spiritual journey, one that I share with you. Debra Cohen, music, books, and merch. Thanks for listening.